Okay, so now that we've gotten ready by preparing ourselves to fail and set up our metrics and made sure our product is totally instrumented, we've come to actually the meat of this presentation, which is what I call the growth loop. And this is basically a 4-step process that you can run, whether it's on a weekly cadence or a monthly cadence, whatever frequency you're able to do it, where you're able to break growth into 4 discrete steps and execute them over and over again and hopefully get good results out of it. And so those 4 steps are brainstorming, prioritizing, executing, and then finally debriefing, or kind of learning from what you've done. And we're going to dive into each of them one at a time, starting with brainstorm. So the goal of the brainstorming step is to generate as many ideas as possible for growth experiments, right? What are the different ways that you can grow? And there's no bad ideas here. And this is one place where, I have a background as an engineer and I still write code for better or for worse a lot of the time, where actually knowing how hard something is probably a detriment to generating good ideas. The goal here is to think about what could grow your company, not about how much work it's going to be. And also to allow for bad ideas, quote unquote bad ideas or crazy ideas, to have some place for discussion. Because a lot of times those bad ideas end up being good, or that there's some kernel of goodness underneath the surface. So during this stage, one framework I find helpful is what's called the Traction framework. There's a book called Traction by Gabe Weinberg, who's the founder of a search engine called DuckDuckGo. It's a great book, super helpful. In the book, he outlines that there's at least 19 different traction channels. I'm not going to read them all to you, but there's a bunch of them. And when I first read that list, I thought, man, there's no way that all of these can apply to my startup. But I really encourage you, when you're in your brainstorming sessions, to really think about each one of these and whether or not it could apply to you. For example, at Chartable, we are currently doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these traction channels. Some of them will work better than others, but I wouldn't have necessarily guessed that we'd be doing 9 of the 19 this early into our company's life. The ones that have been most effective for us have been piggybacking on existing platforms. So it turns out that podcasts are RSS feeds that have to have an email address in them because that's what Apple requires to be listed in the Apple podcast directory. And it turns out if you write people emails to those addresses, that they'll write back. And so if you're offering a valuable service to those podcasters, maybe they'll come and try it out. We've also had some success with trade shows. We've done in-person events. We've done a fair amount of content marketing, writing on our blog, also trying to get kind of regular press from The Verge, TechCrunch, et cetera. All these things are worth examining. Maybe they're a fit for your startup, maybe they're not, but I wouldn't dismiss any of them out of hand. So there's 19 different channels, and when you're doing your brainstorming session, it's worth thinking about every single one. The next thing that I like to do, and it's something that I've actually been leaning into more as I've gotten a little bit older and a little bit grayer, is writing things down. So writing down what I call an experiment brief, which is like language borrowed from actual science, but this is the science of growth here. So just like writing what you're trying to achieve, what the name of the experiment is, give it something kind of so you can identify it, some kind of hypothesis for why you think it's actually going to help your company, and then defining like the metrics of success and countermetrics so that you know how whether or not it's achieved your goal. This is something that we do basically for every project at Chartable, and I have an example or two here shortly, which I'll show you.